Okay, so the previous Zoe is having an MOT, so we're on to the next project. So this is a customer's car, and it needs motor bearings. That should be the only thing it needs, not like the previous Zoe that we did steering rack. We ended up doing the reduction gear, and this one should be a lot more straightforward. It's done 71,000. It's got noisy bearings, and the customer, being smart, has got it arranged to have it fixed, and I can put new bearings in the motor. Much better to get it done when you can hear it's noisy. If you leave it to the point it breaks down, chances are you can't change the motor bearings because the heat or the vibration from those bearings has damaged something inside the motor. And I've seen that before, and then you just have to find another motor, which is more expensive basically. So let's have a listen. It's due a service, that's what the spanner is. Let's see what it sounds like. So I'm going to hang you outside. Yeah, it's not mega loud, but it's fairly noticeable in the cab. Kind of wob, 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 wob. I might just wedge you under the bonnet next, I think, because you'll get a better experience, just so you can hear what this one sounds like. Right. So it's going to go dark, but you'll be able to hear what's going on a little bit better, I think. What we're going to do, just wedge you under here, I think. Where are we going to put this? Right, hold on. 1 minute. Right, I'll wait the phone there. If I lose my phone, I'll just have to take the car apart. Right. Okay, right, so hopefully you could hear that real kind of low sort of rumbly, warbly kind of noise, fairly typical. So I'm going to get this in the workshop and start stripping it down. So yeah, I'm hoping this one goes through sort of easily, really, not a complete nightmare like the last one, but we shall see. Another Zoe. So yeah, it's a Zoe 40, this one, 68 plates, so not very old, 71,000 miles. So it's done a few miles, but it's not loads, is it really? So they're not lasting that well, but yeah, we can fix them, get it back on the road. Customer's reasonably keen to have it back. So yeah, let's crack on with it. Right, let's do it. Right, so we've got this Zoe in the workshop, so we know what we need to do with this one. When you start stripping it down, so yeah, they're obviously a fairly big job, these. So it's about 8 to 10 hours to do sort of drivetrain removal. So that is basically taking out the whole motor stack under the bonnet. So if we have a look under here, so it's got an air-cooled motor, that's the motor cooling fan, and then there's like a control box here, and then the motor is kind of like just down there, you can't quite see. Yeah, I'm gonna crack on with that. Yeah, I'm hoping this is going to go through fairly smoothly. So the 8 to 10 hours is to strip everything down and then put it all back in again. That doesn't include the time to fit the bearings in the motor. We'll have a look at the motor. The previous car we did, the blue one, that motor was okay. I hope this one will be okay as well, because the car hasn't broken down, so nothing's been damaged inside the motor from the bearing heat or vibration or anything to make it break down. But you never quite know, really. Sometimes when you look at the motor, there are, you know, concerning signs, and it's a long job, it's not a cheap job. I'm not going to do it unless I'm confident, basically, unless I'm happy that it's going to be good and reliable for the customer. So yeah, we'll see what this one looks like when it comes apart. I've warned the customer that it may require a motor, and then we'll basically just fit a really low mileage motor, because we know the reliability can be a concern. So yeah, fit a super low mileage one, and then it'll be all good. So yeah, this one should just be straightforward motor work. Yeah, hopefully we'll get the bearings in the motor, but we shall see. So I'm going to get this up in the air, start stripping down, and crack on, and catch you later. All right, cheers. Okay, so we've started stripping down. So obviously we've got the bumper off. Wheels, under trays are off. There's various sort of metal kind of brackets that fit around the sides. Yes, I've been cracking on with that. So next ones I'm going to do scuttle panel. I need to drain the oil and the coolant, which takes a little bit of time just to let those come out. And then start stripping this front down. So there's this air duct, there's the charging socket. I've got the cables off the battery. Obviously we did high voltage isolation first, that you have to do. Yeah, so I'm going to continue stripping this down, but that's where we are so far. Yeah, cool, good stuff. All right, I will catch you in a bit. Cheers. Okay, just continue to strip this down. So coolant and oil are just draining out, just dripping out. The customer had obviously tried changing the reduction gear oil because that's like golden, but yeah, unfortunately that was obviously not successful because it was the motor rather than the reduction gear. So yeah, that crash bar's off, and just yeah, various bits of stripping down on the front there. Next it's gonna be the radiator pack, and then the sort of 12 volt battery area, and that's the motor cooling fan. So yeah, we're just continuing to strip down. They did come apart fairly quickly. I actually know a guy at a garage, and he can do a Zoe motor change in about 5 hours, and it's a sort of 8 to 10 hour job really, which I think's pretty impressive. But he has done quite a lot of them, and he is a very experienced mechanic. So yeah, I think for the rest of us mere mortals, we have to go more by the book time. But yeah, I've done a few of these, so I kind of know what I'm doing. But yeah, it's quite cool really. So once those bits are out, we've got drive shafts and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, one of the other things is this wiring loom, that kind of undoes that side and then comes over and just moves out of the way, and then there's another wiring loom round that motor stack that kind of connects to various points, and all that's got to be taken off as well, and then we can get the engine crane, get this stack out, strip it apart, and see what's happening. So right, I'll continue this and catch you in a bit. All right, cheers. Okay, well, it's a bit late, it's very dark, but progress is good. So basically everything is now out of the way. Drive shafts off, obviously subframe, radiator pack, crash bar, everything is out of the way. And the next job is to get this stack out. So this has a wiring loom that goes round it, and it's connected to various places on the car. So it's kind of like all of these. This is like the DC output, and to the comms and stuff like that, water pump and all that kind of stuff. So there's this loom all wrapping round the stack, and then that goes across here, and then it connects to various places. So it connects to, this is the main ECU, so that top plug. There's one on the 12 volt current sensor, battery current sensor, and that's the 12 volt test module. And there's earth points, that's what's called the protection and switching unit, the catchy name. There's several multi-plugs in there, so you sort of pop the lid off there and do all that kind of stuff. But yeah, basically you undo all of that, and then that loom you kind of keep with the stack, and then you unbolt that and lift that out. So yeah, pretty good progress really, actually. So yeah, very shortly we'll get that out, and then obviously get it stripped down and see what's going on. It very much sounds like the motor. Obviously we need to confirm that, have a good look at the motor, see if that's suitable to be rebuilt. I've seen various issues with these motors because I've rebuilt quite a few. So probably rebuilt 5 or 6 motors, but I've also not rebuilt about the same number of motors, because when you start looking at them, you see kind of various issues that mean they're not going to be suitable to rebuild. So we shall see. I have got a motor, I've got one, if we need it for this car, but I'm hoping it's going to be okay. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. I hope that's interesting, and I will catch you later. All right, cheers. Okay, so apologies, I've got a slightly sore throat, but we shall crack on. So yeah, the last video we got this prepped and kind of towards ready to come out. What we need to do next is get all this wiring sort of untangled. Basically this wiring loom that goes all over the whole stack and then comes over here and connects to various things. Got to get that all undone, and then just that stays with the stack, and then the stack comes out basically. So we're going to do that next, and then strip it down and see what we've got. I was chatting to the owner, and he said it did actually break down. I had it in my head that it never broken down, but it did break down once. Went to Renault, they gave it a software update. Didn't break down since, but then I think because of the noise it was making, the owner didn't really want to drive it too much. So yeah, we'll see. We'll give this motor a good check over anyway, but that just means we need to sort of pay particular attention to that area around the rotor position sensor. And we've got to take that all apart anyway to rebuild the motor. But yeah, it's quite a long job. So you just want to be sure when you're doing this that it's going to be reliable, because it takes a long time to do, and we want the car to be reliable. So yeah, and we shall see what happens, see if this is good to rebuild, or if we need to put another motor in it. I have got a motor available, and that is plan B, but I'm hoping that's not going to be needed, so we shall see. I'll crack on and catch you in a bit. All right, cool, cheers. Right, so we're about ready to get this stack out. I've actually decided to do the wiring slightly differently. So the Renault powertrain removal instructions, so that loom that fits around the motor stack and connects to various points, basically you disconnect that from all those various points, and then you bring it out with the stack. And when I did the ZE50, the white one, it had it was a little bit more complicated because it's got CCS and there's additional wires going up and over, an additional ECU, and it's really hard to get the BMS cable out that runs through here, clips on here, down and to the battery. And so I left the loom on the car, disconnected it from the stack and left it connected to the car. And I've sort of done that with this one. You still have to take it off a few points around the 12-volt battery just for access purposes, but yeah, just trying it that way to see if it makes it slightly easier. To be honest, it doesn't take that long to take all these bits off, and you have to take some of them off anyway, but just interesting when you do things kind of time and again, you just sort of see different ways, and we'll give that a try. And it makes it slightly handier because the engine crane's not going to be kind of, you know, like the strap's not going to be, the loom's not going to be in the way of the strap, but you've got to obviously make sure we don't bend that too much, keep it clean, all that kind of stuff. And the water pump is still on it, so I've just put that on top of the disc because we don't want that pulling that. But yeah, anyway, I'm just about to pull the stack in and I'll get that out. You know you're getting somewhere when you can do that. There's not a lot holding it in. So literally that is just held in by the 3 bolts on that mounting there. And then that one over there, I've undone the sort of dog bone as a mounting at the back, which is that one, and it just goes in that black bracket. So yeah, we shall get this off. The car has been sitting around for quite a while, and you can kind of feel that as you're doing it. Some of the bolts sort of don't really want to come off and stuff, but we are getting there. We shall see how it goes, and yeah, get this one apart and see what's going on. All right, catch you in a bit. Cheers. Okay, so this is out. Fantastic. So that wasn't too bad. Some of the bolts are a bit more stiff than they have been on other Zoes, but actually the owner said the car's been sat for a long time. Just sort of working out what they're going to do with it. So yeah, this is pretty good. It's on the floor, and we're going to start stripping it down. So the first thing I'm going to do is take the reduction gear off this end, and then we can inspect that motor shaft. That's where the position sensor is, and I've seen various issues at that end with the position sensor, and that's absolutely crucial. If you have an issue there, then we're kind of increasing the likelihood that we're going to need a replacement motor. But we'll look over it all. We need to take this what's called the PEC, the control box, off the back, and you've got to take the aircon compressor off to do that. So yeah, I'm going to do that strip down, and then we'll see where we are. All right, cool. Okay, so we got this reduction gear off. Let's give this a spin so you can hear it. Yeah, it sounds pretty bad, so that's obviously what's making the noise. When you take these off, and this one really didn't want to come off, so you see this aluminium corrosion here. This one's got quite a lot sort of around these surfaces holding it together. I mean, you can see on here it's like sand, the amount of corrosion, and it's all just kind of washing off here. But yeah, nice bit of aluminium. So yeah, that does sound pretty terrible. Trying to sort of wiggle the shaft, and one of the things that can happen is the bearing can sort of lock up, and it can then rotate, so like the outer race rotates as well, the whole bearing rotates, and then it kind of scores out the housing, and then this shaft can move. Because if you look in here, fine, good. So those coils, you can see that's the rotor position sensor. So this and then those coils in there are the rotor position sensor. And then if we can get a shot, not the easiest to get the light in there, but if we do that, try and get it to focus as well. Where are we going to go? If we come up here, so if you can see that, there you go, you can see that at the bottom there. So that lobed ring rotates. There you go, and you can see that's moving in and out. If I go, oh, there we go. So that's the position sensor and its ring. So the position sensor sort of effectively sends a signal, and then that gets reflected back magnetically by that ring, and then obviously as that moves in and out, the motor controller can tell the position of the motor. So that's how the position sensor works. Kind of cool. That sensor has got quite a lot of surface rust on it. The ring, sorry, it's in the middle of the sensor. Try and get that to focus. There you can see that surface corrosion that the old phone can't quite cope there with the, oh, there you go. You can see that corrosion's quite bad. So yeah, I think so far so good. It does sound terrible. Now it's not going to focus properly because I just focused in one place. There we go. Yeah, it does sound bad. That position sensor, the inside's quite corroded. Doesn't look like that's moved. It is a bit of a concern that it did break down with the rotor position sensor. But there is a bit of corrosion on there. Maybe there's a bit of movement in the bearing. Maybe that's enough to cause that position error. One of the things we check for is wear on this shaft. Let me just get that to focus. There we go. So you can see there's a shiny bit starting just there. So that's the bit that's in contact with the reduction gear, and you can see that it's made it slightly more shiny there. So, but if we look sort of from here down that shaft, so you can see it's pushed in a little bit, but it's not significant. That's pretty, yeah, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. And I'm happy with that so far. I think we're gonna continue, see if it's rebuildable. So I need to get the rest of this off. I was just quite keen to have a look at that. I'll strip the rest of this down, have a look at the back of the motor. It's got a brush box because it's a separately excited AC motor. It's magnetless, and we'll see what happens there. So yeah, taking that off was quite interesting because it was really stuck on there. It's got like these steel locating plugs, and that it's steel in aluminium, and they just get corroded, and all this is corroded together, so it starts to move, but it's just really tight. And you can't just smash it with a hammer. You've just got to be really careful. You can give it some gentle taps one side and another side, wiggle it by hand. You just got to take it off carefully. Then as it starts to come off, you've got to keep going straight, because there's a rubber and a fibre seal on here, and if you scuff that, then it's not going to seal. And there's oil on the other side of that, seal. So just inside there, where the sort of inner splines are there, there's oil in there. So effectively this bit of the shaft is in oil, and then there's a seal around there. So if you scuff that, then you've got to replace that, and that's not easy. So yeah, I'll continue stripping this down. I'll have a look at the other end. But yeah, I think so far so good. Yeah, all right, cool, catch you later. Okay, so we're fully apart now. So we've got the PEC off this back end of the motor, and I've taken the brushes off as well. So this is yeah, magnetless. It is an AC motor, but separately excited. Yeah, they're not too bad, those. But yeah, probably about 80% still there, something like that. There was quite a bit of brush material in here, but kind of, oh, they're kind of normal really. And these slip rings look okay. Is that focusing? I don't know. There we go. Yeah, these look okay. I've seen issues with where these can be lipped or kind of worn, but that looks fine, so nothing too much of concern there. Some of the casting in here is
pretty wonderful. But yeah, kind of average Renault really. Quite a lot of corrosion on this motor. Some aluminium corrosion. I've been hoovering it out of here. But yeah, I think this car's just been sitting around for a while, so I think this motor can be rebuilt. What I'm going to just do is just spin it quite quickly. We know that end's noisy, but I just wanted to listen to this end as well, and then see what we can hear. So let's do that and give us a bit more of an indication. All right. Well, as I say, it's pretty terrible, isn't it? I think that's actually both bearings that are making a noise. So I would say that we can rebuild this. So one of the biggest issues, as I was saying, is sort of movement with this shaft. And now it's all apart, I can sort of put my foot on it to steady it and just give that shaft a good wobble. We're just trying to find out if there's any kind of movement sideways, up and down, because that causes that issue with that sensor. And it looks okay, as well as that seal I was mentioning, this, which I've now put a bag in, but to keep the dust out. But that seal, which goes round, just, oh, come on, focus. See that, the larger line to the left. It's where that seal goes, and yeah, you can get corrosion in there. There is a little bit in there, but it's not affecting that where that seal is, so that's fine. This isn't discoloured or worn particularly, so this is kind of normal where they have the sort of tapered splines on there. So yeah, this looks okay to me. Yeah, I'm not too worried. So yeah, I think that's pretty good news really. So the next job is going to be obviously get this apart, fit the bearings. We've gone blurry again, come on, there we go. Yeah, strip this down, get the bearings in, and just make sure we're still happy with everything when we get that apart. But I think so far so good. So we know this is broken down with an issue with that sensor, but I think this, because the bearings are just quite bad, I think this is just likely going to be bearing movement, bearing heat, that kind of thing. There is quite a bit of corrosion on that ring, but yeah, I've got those, so we can yeah, we can sort this out. So it's definitely going to need that inner ring that goes in there. That's a sort of separate bit. When you take all of this off, this cone off, there's the ring inside there comes out, and then this sensor's separate. So we'll have a look at that sensor, see what that looks like. Definitely replace that ring. We'll swap the brushes because there's a reasonable amount of wear there. Yeah, we'll see how we go. So all right, hope that's interesting. But yeah, it's good we're actually getting somewhere. So yeah, good stuff. All right, catch you later. Okay, so it's time to rebuild this motor. So in the last video we had a good look over this motor. It looked okay, and I've done a few of these, so I kind of I've developed a little list of my own of things I check before I see if they're suitable to rebuild. Basically it's got two bearings, they're different sizes, one at each end, and as you know from the last video, it doesn't sound too good. But yeah, there is a bit of corrosion on it, but nothing so far has meant that we're not going to proceed with rebuilding it. So we get it apart and see what's going on, see how it comes apart, what the corrosion looks like inside, if there's any other damage, heat damage. See, those noisy bearings generate heat, and that can cause a few issues. So see if there's anything we're concerned about, or if there's any issues when it comes apart, and see what happens. So I've got my brush kit, I've got that ring that goes in the middle of the position sensor, and I've got a new position sensor itself. We'll have a good look at this position sensor. Might be able to reuse that one, but if at all concerned, then we'll just replace it. So yeah, let's get this apart and see what's going on. All right, cool, catch you in a bit. Okay, so we've got the position sensor off that end. That end's definitely really noisy, and it is a sort of classic noisy bearing sound on this motor. We've got the brush box cover off, got the brushes off, and got this plastic protector off, because we've got to pop this cap off next, so we don't want to damage these slip rings, and also we've got to have that plastic bit out of the way there. So yeah, that's what we're going to do next. I'm interested to see if this bearing is noisy this end. It does vary. I think it's more common that that end is noisy, so I suspect this is the more sort of common bearing failure. And we're still trying to work out really why these bearings fail, because they're good bearings, they just don't work well in this motor. I suspect it might be a little bit like the air conditioning compressors, so Zoe's with the air con compressors, there's one over there. They're not very reliable, but they're a very similar design to the one that's in the Nissan Leaf,
but in the Nissan Leaf, it's not physically the same. But in the Nissan Leaf, they're really reliable. Whereas, some years of Nissan Leaf they're in. Whereas in the Zoe, they tend to fail. And I suspect it's a sort of not a good fit, a kind of applicability issue. But yeah, what I really want to do at some point is actually to kind of take a bearing apart or get it properly cut open. They're pretty difficult to open, unfortunately, and get it put under a microscope and see what's going on. But for the minute, I'll just keep putting new bearings in. But yeah, I'll crack on with this, and we'll catch you later. All right, cheers. Okay, so we've got this end cap off. That came off okay, actually. And this bearing sounds all right, actually. So I was sort of saying it more sounded like the noise was coming from the other end. Yeah, that sounds okay. Obviously, you can only turn it fairly slowly, but it doesn't feel gravelly. It's not kind of locking up in the fingers. A little bit of corrosion on the mating surfaces, but not too bad. And then, so inside the motor, so this is the stator around the outside. Let's turn the light on. And then in the middle, we've got the rotor there, and it's a wound rotor on these. Hence, it needs the slip rings, which I've covered up, to sort of excite that, to turn that into a magnet, so that then it can power these phases, and then it can push the rotor around. So, yeah, that one went okay. If you see these tabs, so this is where, so the slip rings, it goes down and then onto, sort of through here, through this shaft, and then onto these tabs. I'm not going to rotate it because it's going to drag against the stator. So basically what I'm finding is if the bearing at this end is the one that gets noisy, it causes heat here, and it can actually damage these windings. And I've got an example of that because I've got one over here that I picked up from a garage just to have a look at it, basically just to see what was wrong with it. And if you look through here, you can see there's a loose winding there. So that, if that will kind of focus, yeah, that has pinged off from the tab. So that winding, can we see where that's coming from? Kind of tricky, isn't it? But it's coming out from the sort of inside of the outer edge. Yeah, so it's coming sort of one of these ones, isn't it, that's meant to be on here, but has basically just pinged and is over here. So what's happened is the bearing has put so much heat through the shaft that that it's overheated this tab and melted that off, and I've seen that before. So whereas on this car, this broke down with the rotor position sensor, so the position sensor is this end, which is the end with the noisy bearings, which kind of makes sense. So I'm suspecting that bearing is really bad, got lots of excess movement or, you know, noise and all that kind of stuff, and that's the one that's heating up. Could be the heat that's affecting the sensor, could be the movement, but yeah, it looks like there's actually lots of I just noticed this actually, but there's a lot of material in here, isn't there? I don't know if you can see that. That's not normal. That'll need cleaning up. Just wondering where that's come from, whether that's actually come from the bearing. Yeah, we shall see. But yeah, I'll continue to get this apart. Yeah, so I've got that cap off. Next job is to push that rotor out. We have to do that extremely carefully so we don't damage the stator, because there's these sort of metal shims. I can't remember what someone called them. There was a really interesting discussion in the comments actually recently on my previous motor rebuild about what the kind of makeup of that stator and how that works, which is cool. So yeah, any sort of insights, do drop them in the comments. But that's what a Zoe motor looks like when you take it apart. Yeah, so next, get this rotor out, don't damage it obviously, and get the bearing off the other end, and then it's fully apart. You clean everything up, put the new bearings on and put it back together without damaging anything, obviously. And then yeah, give it a little spin, see what it sounds like. But the true test is kind of when you get it back in the car, spin it up high speed, and obviously get some load on it and see what happens. But yeah, hope that is interesting. All right, cool, catch you in a bit. Okay, cool, so we got this rotor out. It actually came out really nicely. The previous one I did was a bit more of a struggle, and basically it's about 15 kilos this, and you've got to slide it out. And the stator windings are here, and these are all like little metal shims. I don't know if you can really see, but basically as you bring the rotor out, it's really easy to sort of push those apart as you're bringing that out. So you've got to kind of not drag it but sort of lift it, but it's difficult, obviously it's heavy. But yeah, that actually came out really nicely. So the other bearing is still in the end, so I need to get that out. That one's got a circlip on it.
Incidentally, if you're interested in more information about these bearings, I just did a member video about the sort of specific bearings, the specs, considerations in sort of choosing bearings, that kind of thing. So if you're interested in a bit more tech information, check out the link in the description below for the member video on that one. So yeah, we got this rotor out. I've got my new bearings. That's just one I was using for the member video, just to show people. But yeah, so I've got to pop this one out. That one's got the circle clip on it. There we are. So and I've got my new bearings. So once I've got that one out, I've got to clean everything up. You always get a bit of corrosion on these motors, sort of dissimilar metals, and you can see the sort of, you know, how that's rusted, and that just sort of damages the housing slightly. So you've got to clean that up really carefully. We don't want to cause any excess play, but we need all the surfaces to be nice and clean. And once we've got the new bearings on this rotor, we can slide that back in. Yeah, and then the next step will be to clean everything up in terms of sort of this cap, so where we've got corrosion on like the mating surfaces, just to make sure everything goes back exactly spot on. Get that cap back on, and then you sort of finish the rebuild of the motor. So I'm gonna crack on with that, and I'll catch you in a bit. All right, cheers. Okay, so I've got the other bearing out of the output end. I've just wedged the phone on the motor so that I can spin this. I've just sort of shoved a bit of wood in the end of it, very technical. But hopefully you can hear that. Yeah, sounds pretty bad. So so it was definitely this end that was making noise. The other one from the sort of back end, the brush box end, yeah, that one sounded okay. So this is kind of classic bearing failure. I have seen both, or one or another, but this is the kind of normal, yeah, normal pattern. And this is where the rotor position sensor is, so that kind of probably explains why it broke down with the rotor position sensor error. But yeah, as I was saying, I've got to clean everything up. You can see that there's a bit of rust in there. That's obviously, this is aluminium, but if I get that to focus, but yeah, that is kind of rust from the outer race of the bearing. Because it's kind of a bit rusty. It's actually not bad, to be honest. Sometimes when they're really rusty, it like scores the case, and it's, you know, kind of quite bad really. But yeah, it's not too bad. So I'm going to continue with this rebuild, and I'll let you know when it's all back together. All right, cool. Catch you in a bit. Right, so I've got one end bearing on the rotor. I'm just going to do the other one, but yeah, this is basically what I'm aiming for. I just cleaned this up with degreaser. There was a little bit of marking on there, so I just rubbed that really gently with a bit of real fine sandpaper, and just used degreaser and just some paper towel, just clean it up. But this is really what we're looking for. You know, this thing spins mega fast. We want these bearings to be spot on in the right place. No grease, no contamination, no grit, so that everything's perfectly lined up. And I just thought that is basically what I want to see, nice and clean. The bearing sits here, and then there's this clip that goes on there to hold it into place. But yeah, that's what we want, a nice shiny shaft. That's what we need. So yeah, I'm going to get this one on, and then we can get that rotor back in, and we'll be all good. All right, cool. Cheers. Okay, cool, now we're getting somewhere. So yeah, so we got this one on. This is the cap end, so this is the sort of correct way to go back into the motor, and this is the output shaft end with the snap ring. Yeah, so they both went on really nicely. Circlip went straight back on there. I think it actually helps that it's cold. I mean, I can see my breath in the workshop today. It is particularly cold, and that just makes that rotor a little bit smaller, and then I'll heat the bearings up and they just go straight on. It's sort of in the summer I was having to tap them on just to encourage them a little bit, because they're real fine tolerance. But yeah, just heating up those bearings and just getting them a little bit fraction bigger, and then the shaft is obviously a fraction smaller just because of the cold, and they basically just slide straight on. But then once these bearings are cooled down, they're not going to come off, so they've effectively just sort of shrunk and gripped it as they've cooled down, and that one's got the circlip on it anyway. So yeah, I'm going to get this popped back in. Got to do this carefully just not to damage that stator. But yeah, this is all going pretty well, so we shall see how this goes. But yeah, so far so good. All right, cool. Catch you in a bit. Cheers. Okay, cool. So the rotor is back in. So we got a nice shiny bearing there, and got the circlip in, and that's the circlip that holds the bearing onto the shaft. Actually went in really nicely. I've cleaned up all of this because this was all quite corroded. And you don't want to take much off, but you want to get rid of the corrosion so that everything fits back exactly sort of in the correct geometry. But yeah, this one is going really nicely. I've done this quite a few times. Nice shiny bearing there. So I've got to get this cap back on. I've cleaned up this mating surface, and I've got to do the same here. So you can see all this aluminium corrosion. It just causes it to not sit as snug as it should, basically. And we want that to be yeah, all perfectly lined up, basically, because it spins really, really fast. It's just really important that it's well put back together and all clean. So yeah, it's all looking good. I'm just going to cover this up just to stop any grit or dirt getting on there, and then clean this cap up, and then I'll be able to pop that back on, and then we'll have a motor yeah, nearly rebuilt. So there's like a plastic cover this end and a rotor position sensor the other end, but the sort of bearing swap, then we'll be done. So yeah, I'm going to do that, and I'll catch you in a bit. All right, cheers. Okay, so the cover is back on. That went on quite nicely. It's just kind of a case of walking that on with the bolts and just really taking time to make sure it is sort of bang on square. Obviously we've cleaned up all the mating surfaces so they all go back nice with no sort of gaps. So let's just give this a spin and see what it sounds like. I've got my strap on. I just got to hold it still. All right. Well, you can just hear the bearing, but kind of a normal, yeah, normal noise there. So that sounds really good. Yeah, I mean, it's making no noise at all, which is perfect. So that is what we want. So this is a kind of a case of so far so good. That rebuild's actually gone really well. I'm happy with that. And that is basically ready to refit the sensor, brush box, brush kit. Yeah, and basically just start building the stack. So yeah, that motor is basically done, and we crack on. So yeah, cool. Hope you've enjoyed that. Any questions, drop them in the comments, and I will catch you later. Yeah, all right, cheers. Okay, so in the last video we got this motor rebuilt, so it's not making a horrendous noise anymore. So the next job is to basically rebuild the stack and then get it back in that car. Basically what you have on this end is the reduction gear, which is that one there, and that's the shaft where the motor, the hole where the motor shaft goes in. And it's getting really prone to surface rust just from other motors I've had around, so I've gotten the tendency of just putting a bit of spray oil on and putting sort of something over them to cover them, and that this up to about here sits in the oil inside the reduction gear anyway, so no issue with getting a little bit of oil on that. And then the box just under here, so this is what's called the PEC. So that hole just there, under that black bit, that's where these motor wires go. So when it wraps around there, and then the air conditioning compressor sits on top of here. So yeah, and then you get that built and get it back in there. So I'm going to crack on with that, and I'll catch you in a bit. All right, cheers. Okay, so we're nearly finished with this motor. So we've got the position sensor and that ring back on, so that's got a brand new ring in it. You can see that there, if I get the light in the right place. See that moving in and out inside that position sensor. So the old ring that goes in the middle was quite rusty there, so that's not good, so we replace that. The position sensor looked okay, so that's gone back on. This end you can access without too much difficulty, so when we spin it up, if you have any issues, we can kind of regain access to this end. Whereas the other end, this is where the control box fits around, so this one you can't basically access it unless it's like this, when everything's apart. When we start rebuilding this stack, we literally have to get back to this stage to access this, so that's why you got to fit this new brush kit on there. It's a 3-phase motor, but it's externally excited. It doesn't contain any magnets, so the rotor is wound and the stator is wound, so you've got to excite the rotor. So you've got to put some current into the rotor, so it's got these brushes and slip rings, and then got this cover back on. That's a bit of a faff, and got these brush wires. Very important to get these around the right way, as we discovered in a previous project. So yeah, so that's the cover that just goes back on over there, and then I'm going to get the control box on the side, reduction gear on, and get this rebuilt and get it back in that car. All right, cool, catch you in a bit. Okay, so reduction gear's on. It's an air-cooled motor, that's the air inlet, and basically, a truth universally accepted, if there's a hole, you'll drop a bolt or a spanner or something in it, so we don't want to do that. And then the air goes basically into the gearbox, through the motor, and out the back there. So yeah, that's on. It's sort of reduction gear, 10-to-1 reduction and differential. So the drive shafts are where those green bags are. Amusingly, I was just recording a member video outside, yeah, the wife saw me, and yeah, she did roll her eyes a bit. I don't think she's totally convinced about YouTube videos, to be honest, but yeah, maybe if we get a few more subscribers, a few more members, then she might be convinced. But yeah, if you're interested in sort of more practical videos about Zoe, sort of common issues and how you can fix those at home, then consider membership. It basically, those videos take a bit more time and lots more explaining. They're potentially sort of like methods that I've developed, and so it just takes time, and you just basically, there's just a little bit of cost to cover. I've literally made it as cheap as physically possible on YouTube. Even the most expensive level is less than £2 a month. It's at £1.99 a month at the moment. So yeah, consider that. But yeah, so we've got that on. We'll get this box on next, air conditioning compressor on, and then there's a bracket on the back that's got that dog bone like engine mounting stabilizer bar bolted onto it, and yeah, finish getting this built and get it back in basically. So yeah, cool. All right, let's do it. Right, now we're getting somewhere. So we've got this box on. So this is called the PEC. Renault called the PEC, and that contains kind of onboard charger. Although charging on a Zoe is kind of complicated, but a charging rectifier, that's a charging filter, the motor controller, DC-DC converter, stuff like that. So lots of the power and control electronics, and the battery, the main battery, literally connects to this box via that cable that's just sat there. That comes on the battery. So yeah, that wiring loom, there's a wiring loom that connects to that position sensor on the motor. That connects in there into the motor controller, and then that's for the motor cooling fan that sits on there and blows down into there. Yeah, so this is rebuilt. I need to put the air conditioning compressor back on, and basically this is just held on with, there's a bolt down there, there's one of those either side. There's when you push this in, that bolt literally connects these two together, and then there's a bracket here that's got 4 bolts, and that's what holds it together. And this is effectively your motor stack. And then that goes up under the bonnet, and there's a mounting there, and then there's 3 bolt holes there, and there's an engine mounting there, and then there's that stabiliser bar that we mentioned earlier. So yeah, this is nearly ready to go back in basically. I'm going to get the compressor back on, so that's built, and then have some lunch I think, and then we'll get this back in and see what happens. I really want to get this spinning as soon as possible really, and just make sure this is good, and then we'll know we're going the right way. I do take my time. I do things sort of as properly as possible. It's probably good I don't work for a garage or something, because they'll be complaining that I'm taking forever. But you know, if I think the surfaces need cleaning up, then I will clean them up. Alignment is absolutely critical. These are not easy jobs. I don't do many customer jobs, but this is a customer job, and this car's been sat around for a long time, and we want to get it back on the road base. It's a 68 plate. So it's not an old car, and the range on this car, it's a ZE40, Zoe 40, 41 kilowatt hours of usable energy on these. So the range in the winter, 120 miles, in the summer up to about 160 miles. So really good cars, really usable, fantastic range, heat pumps, really nice to drive. They just have this flaw with the motors, but hopefully when this has been rebuilt, it can do another 70,000 miles, and the customer will be happy. So yeah, let's get it sorted and back in and see what happens. All right, I'll catch you in a bit. Cheers. Okay, cool. So that is back in. So we got the air conditioning compressor on, and then that stack is just bolted back in there. So the next thing is to get enough connected so that we can test this, get it spinning, have a listen, because obviously when we spin it on the floor, that's not very quick. And yeah, just kind of see if everything's okay, make sure everything's happy, and then just continue on from there really. So yeah, we've got to get this wiring loom all back on around the stack, get the stack reconnected to the battery, yeah, and just get enough on, things like 12-volt battery, get some drive shafts in and stuff like that, and just double check that we're happy. So yeah, I'm going to crack on with that, and I'll catch you in a bit. All right, cheers. Okay, so we've got the stack back in. I've just done the high voltage activation. Put the 12-volt battery on. I haven't put drive shafts in. I always debate whether you need to really. It's not essential, you just have to be a little bit careful, because basically this has got a parking lock within the reduction gear. I've actually got the bits from the reduction gear. Yeah, so this is the first cog in the reduction gear, where the motor splines actually go into there. And it's got a parking lock which basically just pin which jams this, and because we haven't got any drive shafts, normally you'd use you'd put your foot on the brake, which obviously stops the discs, which stops the drive shafts, which stops the reduction gear and stops the motor, and then you put it back into park. So we basically have to wait for the motor to spin down, and once it starts spinning before we put it back into park, and that's the only thing. But yeah, I'm just keen to see what this sounds like, see how we're doing, and hope that we're moving forward and not having to go backwards and do something else. So right, let's give this a spin. I genuinely haven't spun it, so we shall see what happens. We've got battery charging impossible, not a massive surprise because we've got no charging socket. So that's the brake booster. So car starts, the high voltage system is alive and awake, which is cool. I'll just turn that down. Right, put it into drive. It'll moan because my door's open. Ooh, spinning, sounds alright. Let's go and have a proper listen. Yeah. So there's no oil in the reduction gear, so you get that slight mechanical noise, but the high pitched one is the motor. Yeah, I think that's fine. It's certainly a million times better than it was before. So there's no point putting our foot on the brake. Actually, I think we have to just to change gear, don't we? We just put it into neutral. Motor's still spinning. We just do that so that shuts up. Right, motor's stopped. Brake booster again. And into park. And then we can switch that off. Okay, fantastic. So that sounds like I would expect. You get that mechanical noise, but obviously the reduction gear is dry. And it's unloaded, so it doesn't take up any slack basically, and it spins forwards and backwards. It's kind of like a traction thing, so the car's trying to work out it puts a little bit of torque into the motor, and it expects to see the wheels move, and and that's just its kind of natural state. So what we know now, we're happy with the noise, so that's what I would expect. There were no faults, so the rotor position is working correctly, which is the fault the car did once have, although that was just once. And you could drive this car, so in earlier videos I drove it and we listened to the noise, so it's good that we haven't got that fault, although it didn't have it when we started, if you see what I mean, but it was subject to that fault. But we haven't at least introduced that, so the tolerance of everything at the moment is good. Obviously we need to do high speed tests. There was no load on there, so we got to get it on an A road and basically hammer time and just make sure that everything is working well under full load. But so far so good. So it's back in, it spins, and I am happy with that. So yeah, the next thing to do is basically just crack on with the rebuild. There's probably about another 2 to 3 hours maybe, depending on how it goes. So we have got what I'm also going to do is take off the 12-watt battery, because it spins a water pump slowly, but there's no radiator, obviously no water. Interestingly, with the Zoe, so I've taken the 12-watt battery off there, but still spinning. Yeah, so if we look in there, you can actually see. If that'll focus, possibly. You might just be able to see that spinning. You can probably hear it anyway. So the car is alive. I mean, I can prove it. Now I focus on one thing, then it loses the focus for everything else. 12-watt battery's off. Zoe party trick. Car's not running, but it's still awake. And that's basically just because the DC-DC converter's still running. So yeah, obviously we've got to fully rebuild this front. So the next things are drive shafts. There's the subframe, which is that thing. Those pointy bits go forwards, so it goes along here and then backwards. And then you kind of rebuild up the front from there. So there's like the radiator pack. There's a crash bar, which is just towards the back over there, that one. So that goes from those 3 points there over to there.
Yeah, and just fully build up the front basically, and then lights, bumper, scuttle. We've got under trays, we've got coolant, reduction gear oil. Yeah, just those little things really. But yeah, that's pretty good. That sounds okay. Sounds like I would expect. And I'm happy to crack on. It's certainly an awful lot better than it was before. Proof of the pudding is in the eating, as I say. We've got to do some good tests. But yeah, I mean, as I said to the owner, well, this will be under my warranty now. So obviously, if it has a future issue, we've got to take it, you know, bring it back, take it apart, work out what's gone wrong, and sort it out. So yeah, cool. All right, good stuff. I will catch you later. Cheers. Okay, so this is where we left our Zoe. We spun it. It sounded good. And the next job is to basically get it back together, back on the road, and then we can do some proper high-speed testing, make sure everything definitely sounds good, there's no other niggles. Yeah, and just give it a good test really. There's no absolute guarantee with these bearings. I've done them a few times. Occasionally you can have a little bit of residual noise, and then it's a case of working out where that's coming from and whether we're happy with that. Obviously it's under warranty to the customer, so but yeah, we want to make sure we're doing a good job. So yeah, we've got to rebuild this front end. So there's the subframe underneath, radiator pack on the front, there's a crash bar, scuttle area. Yeah, and there's this wiring limb that wraps around the side. And yeah, that one over there sort of wraps along the front of the radiator and connects to various sensors and stuff. And yeah, we need to get this back together so we can give it a test. So I'm going to crack on with that, and I'll catch you in a moment. All right, cheers. Okay, cool. So we're getting on pretty well here. So we've got the subframe, radiator pack, got all these pipes, cooling vent for the motor there, and then some of the panels around the sides and the aircon pipes fit on around the sides and all that. So yeah, when I've got them in this state, I quite like to clean out this radiator because obviously because the heat pump uses the air conditioning system, you need good airflow. And the slight quirk of the design is this duct. There is a gap underneath it, I suppose. So yeah, the air can kind of, oh, sorry, you were down there. The air can kind of go up here, but it's, it always seems a bit weird because most of the air just hits the front here. But yeah, I like to take this off and then pop this sort of guard off and then just clean all those leaves out and things, just because you want maximum airflow for a good, you know, properly working heat pump. A little quirk of design actually on these Zoes, heat pump related. So this is a water radiator in the front. Obviously it's got the water pipe, and then we've got the aircon radiator behind. Now on your average petrol or diesel car, you'd have the aircon radiator at the front and the water radiator behind, because in a petrol or diesel car you're using the aircon radiator for cooling. You want that to get as cool as possible, and you're obviously using the water radiator for cooling as well. The water radiator though is going to be sort of like potentially 100 degrees or hotter, and if you put that in front of the aircon radiator, it would mean the aircon system wouldn't be as effective, because it would struggle to give you really good aircon, because it would be so hot, if you see what I mean. It would be being heated by the engine effectively, whereas what it's trying to do yeah, is be cooled down. Yeah, so it would harm its effectiveness. Whereas in a Zoe, yeah, okay, you have got a cooling that you want to do with the aircon in the summer. However, the water that's coming into the water cooling radiator is nowhere near as hot, okay? But also, if you think about the winter, your aircon is being used in heat pump mode for heating, and you've also got warm coolant cooling the power electronics. Not mega hot, but warm. So it's interesting with Zoes, because if you think about the air that passes through the radiator, it gets warmed slightly by the power electronics, because these power electronics are cooled by this front water cooling radiator. And then, so the air gets slightly warmed, and that warm air goes into the aircon radiator. So if you're in the winter in heat pump mode, this aircon radiator wants to be warmed up. So the Zoe can actually indirectly scavenge heat from the powertrain, from the power electronics, and use that to warm the cabin, because the air, if it's, let's say it's like -2 outside, the air hitting the front radiator is going to get warmed by the power electronics cooling radiator before it hits the aircon radiator. So interesting quirk. So in a Zoe, these two radiators are actually the other way around than you would expect in sort of your average petrol or diesel car. So yeah, interesting. And obviously with a Zoe, you basically never get a stone chip affecting the aircon rad because it's behind, which is kind of handy. So yeah, I'm just going to clean that out, and then I'm going to crack on. Hopefully this will come together quite quickly because I just want to get this back on the road and see how this is going. So obviously we've got all this scuttle area still to do. So there's a 2-part scuttle there. We've got the crash bar, and we've got all that wiring loom to put all along, and various bits and bobs. So there's still a fair bit to do. So yeah, I think I'm going to crack on, and I'll catch you later. All right, cheers. Yeah, this is the kind of build-up of stuff that I wanted to get out. Yeah, so the air can kind of move up there, but still we want to clear that out, give that a good brush. And the other thing I should mention is I just did a little member video on how to do the coolant changes on these, which yeah is quite doable at home actually, not too difficult. There's just a set procedure you need to follow, and just obviously using the right products and things like that. So yeah, if you're interested in how to do that, and my product recommendations, the product I've used multiple times on Zoe's, which is an aftermarket coolant but fully compatible, yeah, then check out the member videos. They are priced literally as cheap as physically possible on YouTube, just to just sort of cover the cost of doing those videos and sort of accessing information, stuff like that. So yeah, if you're interested in doing a few more jobs on your Zoe, check those out. All right, cool, cheers. Okay, cool, so we're getting somewhere now. So yeah, as you can see, headlights, charging socket, that air dam things on there, that sort of guides the air in. A few bits left to do. The thing I'm going to do next is just clean the pins on that socket, because they look pretty dusty. I know this car's been sat for quite a while, so yeah, just a bit cruddy in there. This also gets really stiff, and if you leave it, then it just breaks off basically. That it's quite weak there, so just sort of put a bit of oil on there. Same on this bonnet release, so it was a little bit stiff as well. So yeah, just doing a few bits and bobs as it's going back together, just make sure everything's going to work all right, because the car's been sat around for a while. So yeah, headlights are on, so yeah, the coolant's in it and that's all bled out. I haven't put any gear oil in it yet, and I've got under trays, arch, the front arch liner, obviously wheels, bumper, and that's about it, I think, with the yeah, with the gear oil. Yeah, cool. Sorry, just thinking. But yeah, it's actually coming together quite nicely, so I'll get these final bits done. I'm quite keen to get this back on the road, and just check it all works basically, because you can never be 100% sure till you've really driven it a bit, and if those bearings are not sort of spot on lined up, then you could have another issue. And obviously we're not in a factory, we're not in a lab. We sort of do our best. They're lined up, but they're not they're potentially not perfectly lined up, which they really need to be for a bearing. So we shall see. We do our best, and then we see what happens basically. So hopefully we don't have to take it all out and put another motor in it, but we will see. That's always the risk. Right, I'll get this finished and I'll get back to you later. All right, cheers. Okay, so I've just cleaned the charge port, so that's all good, and just making sure it charges. So this is just on a 3-pin cable, because that's all I've got in the workshop. I've got a pod point, but that's around the other side, yeah, it always looks a bit random when they're charging all the way back together, but yeah, it's all good. I'm just going to let that charge for a few minutes. Slightly annoyingly on the Zoe, so the granny cable is 10 amps, so we've got about 230 volts ish, 235, so about 2.3 kilowatts. We'll lose a bit through efficiency, but you'll get about 1.9 kilowatts or something going into the battery, but 6 hours from 80%. So this is a 41 kilowatt hour car, so 20% of that will be 8.2 kilowatt hours. I mean, this has done 71,000 miles, so call it 40 kilowatt hours because of loss through age, degradation, stuff like that. So yeah, 8 kilowatt hours on it's roughly 2 kilowatt supply. Should be able to do it in 4 hours. It's just the annoying thing about the Zoe, it shows the balance time on leafs. You get like a time to 80% and stuff like that, which would be nicer. Also, it doesn't actually show you the charge rate. It's really light on the information, which I think is really annoying. But yeah, it charges. It's actually really nice inside this car. I've certainly had a lot worse. One outside that I own is a lot worse. This is a customer car. But yeah, just making sure it all charges, and then I'll finish putting it back together. So I will catch you in a bit. Cheers. Well, it's got a bit late, but we are nearly there with the car. As you can see, bumpers on, yeah, all the scuttle area, and wipers is on, motor cooling fan is on. So I've done the drive shafts. These bolts then go back on, so they're all torqued up. Yeah, discs are a bit corroded on this. Car's apparently been sat around for quite a few months, something like 10 months, something like that. Just due to the issue it had and the customer trying to work out where they're going to get it repaired. I've just put the reduction gear oil in because I hadn't done that yet. So literally all that's left, I've done the front arch liner as well. So obviously wheels, under trays, that's one of the under trays, and then there's another plastic under tray and an aluminium under tray, which fits, it like shields the battery cables. So it's like a really small one just over the cable connectors on the front of the battery pack. Other than that, it's ready to test drive, which will be cool. So yeah, very shortly when it's light, yeah, we'll get this out and then yeah, do some decent testing and see how we go. So yeah, cool. Right, catch you later. Cheers. Okay, so this car is fully back together. Under trays are on, wheels are on and everything, and it's still up on its stands. I'm just going to get it down and torque up the wheels, get it out of the workshop, and then we'll have a little drive and see what it sounds like. So yeah, we shall see. So just spinning it just with the motor and, you know, just up on the stands does sound good compared to the last one. Last one did have a little bit of sort of residual noise, but this one sounds good. So the proof of the pudding is in the eating. Let's get it down, go for a drive and see what happens. All right, catch you in a moment. Cheers. Okay, the car is down, wheels torqued up. Let's give it a little drive. Let's get it out of the workshop and see what it sounds like. Right. Obviously we need to do some sort of high-speed testing. So, just turn that off for a second. Let's put the windows down so we can hear what's going on. It needs a service, that's what that spanner is. Just gonna go carefully. It's just the bins. Well, all I can hear is the brakes, which are quite corroded. There's a car parked there. Just get past this car and then we can go a bit quicker. Well, I know we're going backwards, but I can't hear anything. I'll just turn around and we'll go forwards. There's like Zoes everywhere around here. Oh, well, let's just turn off the pedestrian drone. Right. Sounds good to me. You can hear the brakes. Let's go backwards. Sounds pretty good to me. Well, so far so good. I need to take it for a fast run, but that sounds good to me. Right, cool. Well, that will do me for now. It is working. I'll take it for a proper run, but this car, hopefully, is now properly up and running, and I will catch you later. Cheers. Okay, well, it's a wrap. So I took it for a fast drive, obviously at the national speed limit. So yeah, just did a good few junctions up the local A road, turn around, back again, and all good, absolutely no faults. There's a little bit of noise, especially on regen, around 60 miles an hour, but that is quite common. I've actually seen that on a Zoe that had a brand new motor from Renault fitted, and it still made that noise. So that must be reduction gear wear. And I've heard that on quite a few Zoes, so not an issue. It's obviously the work is under warranty to the customer because this is a customer car rather than just a project that I've bought and I'm doing. So it is all good and ready to go back. Just giving it a wash because it's been sat around for a long time, and it's a wrap. The customer will pick it up in a couple of days. I mean, what do you think about these massive jobs? The design, it really lets these down. So the early type of Zoes, when they came out in 2013, the 5am Zoe has a metal box on top under here. It was a Q210, and if you have certain types of fault, basically you can unbolt that metal box and lift it out, and that's like kind of the charger and a high voltage junction box, and below that is the motor controller. You can also lift that out the top. They also didn't suffer from motor faults like these ones do. The motor comes out the bottom, but just generally everything is easier to access. So these ones, it's not a great design, to be honest. It's kind of built to be fixed in a dealership situation. So this is that PEC box that wraps around the motor. You can see the end panel here. You can see those, so that bolt there and that one there, they've just gone a bit blurry. There we go. So that's the end panel, but that's the frame of the car. So there's not enough space to get that off. People quite often say to me, oh, I need to do this, can I just get that panel off? No, you can't. You have to do the sort of 10 hours to take it out and put it back in again, plus whatever you're going to do to fix the car. So not a great design. I half suspect I'm going to be fixing these for the rest of my life. But you get in the swing of it, you kind of know where everything is, you know what the common things are. You have certain problems and you keep, like bearings and other bits and bobs that I just hold because I use them. And then you gives people a solution. So yeah, the guy I think wasn't sure where to get this fixed. And it sat around for a while. But now it's up and running and it's in a really good condition. It sort of suffered from sitting around for a while, but looks better now it's had a wash. Needs a good clean inside really, but it's a nice little car. It drives really nicely. It's the R110, so a little bit more powerful than the blue one we did last. But yeah, good range, nice car, and now back on the road. So there you go. Let me know if you've had similar problems. Big thank you to all my members. And that's another one done and back on the road, and we'll see what we do next. So I will catch you all later. Cheers.